Okay, so I was having an existentialist crisis. I couldn't say it there for a minute. I was having a crisis about not being able to say it. I've been working on my second book of personal essays about my life, and I finished an essay about, I don't even remember what it was about. It was about fashion. Was it about? Yeah. And when I finished it, I felt kind of like, although I did make a couple, right. I made a couple points that were easy to digest about how fashion is not a, it's a business, so they're manipulating what we want and how we see the world. And I resent that. I resent people telling me what I have to wear. And not only do I resent that, I resent having to pay for something that has the designer's name on it emblazoned instead of my name. Why would I want to advertise for them after I've paid for whatever article of clothing? Oh, by the way, this is the comic book show. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so I've forgotten actually how to do it. All right, so today we have Richard and Greg and Paula, and Tony the truck driver is our special guest. So it's really nice to see Tony. I haven't seen him in a while. So back to where I was jibber-jabbering. So I felt kind of like, why am I doing this? Why am I writing? What's the point? What is the reason why I want to do this thing? Okay. So I decided to write this thing, and it's long, so I apologize for all of you people who don't want to hear this, but here we go. All right. So all around me, I see people who do what they are told. Sometimes it's explicit, like a mother telling her child to pull up her socks. Sometimes it's implied, like a television commercial giving you the idea that buying a Subaru will make you an exciting and free human being. They follow fashion, keep up with the Joneses next door, watch the television shows that the people they work with watch, eat the foods that they're told they will enjoy, join a gym, go to street fairs, follow the social media, and trust every word without using their reasoning powers to figure out if their sources are creating their ideas or if the ideas merely mimic their own. They try to impress each other with the purse they carry, the dog they own, the neighborhood they live in, and their own personal political views. Where did all this information come from? It was not spontaneously born off the top of their heads like Athena popping off the head of Zeus. But I'm no different. I take in information. It collects in the gray cracks of my brain until I think that I have an original thought. I do not. My tastes tend toward the esoteric, so you will never hear me sing the praises of a reality show on Fox News or Fox News. But did I make these calls myself? Who are the people that I admire, that I do not question, that accept all that they tell me as fact? Maybe Hunter Biden is an asshole. Maybe Donald Trump is a smart man playing dumb to connect to the American people on a deeper level. Maybe there are profound differences between the races that should give one pause about intermingling. What do I know for sure? What do I believe in my heart of hearts that could not be changed if the most intelligent pundit knocked on my door personally and gave me the word? Okay, men are not equal. Color, ethnicity, religion have nothing to do with it. Capacity, gene pool, environment, and education.
Maybe I'll do it later.
Make one man a skilled carpenter who can work with his hands and artfully create a masterpiece, and one man a philosopher who can plumb the depths with his mind and figure out intricacies of human thought. He does not do this alone because he fills his head with the wisdom of other people who had the ability for such thought. Nor does the craftsman learn his skill from trial and error. There is a body of knowledge that we can depend upon to build and evolve in our thinking and skill. But men are not created equal. They are all deserving of equal rights under the law and equal opportunities based on abilities. But Einstein and Manson are not equals. Second, everyone will die. No one escapes the inevitable end of life. We may age differently, but in the end, there is death. Chances are particularly good that once we are dead, there's nothing else. All the arguments for transfer of energy are not evidenced by nature that shows the only way nature is cyclical is through procreation. I will live on, and my daughter and granddaughters and their children. Paula Wachowiak will be dead, but her DNA will live on. Your spirit or soul is just something that exists in the actual physical brain and will die with you. Number 3, we all create our own reality, though most of us have allowed other people to create it for us. The rich are interested in keeping it this way. They pay for our drugs and alcohol and distractions, so we do not have time or energy to ask too many questions and figure it out for ourselves. At any moment in time, we can shed all these shades and make ourselves into a new thing of our own choosing. Our imaginations dry up as we get older unless we use them. Imagine a new you. Can you even do it? Could you turn away from the life you made with the blueprints of the others? Can you even fathom what your life would look like? Our meaning should be meaningful to us. It should not conform to some standard given to us like a roadmap. Find out who you are before you die. Number 4, we will never reach our full potential unless we at least understand our filters. Even if we cannot strip our lives of the filters through which we see our reality, we can at least understand that they are there and try to peek around them. If we continue to react to life instead of orchestrating it, we will never live in a meaningful way. It's not easy, but it's worth a shot, and maybe we can do it. If we can do it, we can help guide others along to shed their own filters and figure out their own realities. The last one is money is not a measure of success. Money is a tool that helps us in living a life that we create for ourselves. We do not need all the capitalist garbage that is hoisted upon us through the media. We do not need extreme creature comforts. We need healthful food, a safe place to live, clean water to keep us alive, and a rare few friends who can understand, or at least who try to understand us. All these ideas came from somewhere. I have spent a lifetime trying to cultivate wisdom, but I am just a parrot mimicking great thinkers. Do I have an obligation to write out what I have learned to try to communicate these ideas to people who may not have started out their lives trying to become wise? Do I throw the shit against the wall and hope that some of it's sticky enough to adhere? Is it all self-aggrandizement, mental masturbation? Or am I trying to ease my own confusion, writing to clarify my own misconceptions? If I took each line of this missive and sat down with it to develop my thoughts, would I come away with a clearer idea of my own thoughts?
It's good writing.
And that's what I started.
Heavy.
Yeah, I know. I tend to be. So
I like it though.
The thing is, and I did do that. I have a page and a half that before I found out that Greg's mother was in the hospital and I had to take a shower and run out of the house. I wrote out like a page and a half of stuff on the first paragraph of how I think we could change things. You know, what we need, what we should be able to do, and I mean, I don't know what good it's going to do. It's just a concept, right? We can have lots of concepts, but unless we are able to implement them, you know, and that's the thing about writing. I mean, writing is concept. You can write something, though. You can write something very painless. A little nugget can get into somebody's brain and help to change the way they think about something. Like the thing I wrote about fashion for my book, maybe no one ever thought about fashion being something that you're being told you have to do. Maybe somebody, maybe that never occurred to them. And maybe it's not going to be meaningful. They're not going to say, wow, when they read it. But the next time they go out and they see something that's a new fashion that's being hoisted upon them, because they always go from one extreme to the other, so you have to change. So if you're wearing short skirts one year, long skirts come in next year. So you're out of fashion if you don't change immediately. So I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where I spent my time with that.
Made me think of Kierkegaard, your piece.
And it's funny you should say that, because I think it's in here. I think it was in here, or maybe it was something I was listening to. They talked about Kierkegaard, and I actually looked him up, and I don't know much about him. What is it that reminds you?
He had this theory of the three selves. He says you have a concrete self, which is the self you are right now. All right? But in your mind, you say to yourself, I don't really care for the self I am now. I imagine me being, and then you have an ideal self. That's your second self. That's the self you want to be.
Right.
Okay? Now you can have a realistic ideal self or an unrealistic ideal self.
Right.
Like, I want to be the strongest guy in the city. I can walk into any bar and everybody will be afraid of me. You could have a very unrealistic
but you're 5 foot tall and 120 pounds.
Right.
You think that's a challenge? Try having 3 different altars that all sing out a key and think they're part of some heavenly choir.
But Kierkegaard said
relax, Sammy.
that you can pursue your ideal self.
Yeah.
And you'll probably fail, etc.
Yeah.
Or you'll achieve it and you'll still be unsatisfied. In fact, Kierkegaard said you'll continually be unsatisfied until you find a third self.
Which is?
Your true self.
Oh, okay.
And once you reach your true self, you say, this is where I was meant to be.
Yeah.
You have that level of comfort. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
and it might be different from what you imagined.
Yeah, I think with age, though, I think you get closer and closer to that. I think that peer pressure is more extreme when you're young, and then plus you're being told by your parents and your grandparents and whoever what you're supposed to do and who you're supposed to be. So as you get older, you can shed those. I mean, if you're lucky, not everybody's lucky. Some people hold on to that. That's why I think people have midlife crisis, is because when they're in their, they're getting toward old age, they're not old yet, but 40, 45, they're saying, this is not my beautiful house.
This is not my beautiful wife.
This is not my beautiful wife. This is not my beautiful car. I never wanted this.
Do you think that song might be about that?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
I definitely do. Yeah, I think that it's about a crisis and saying.
Yeah, you're crossing a threshold and you're reflecting.
I never wanted this. What do I want? I never wanted this. I did this because I was told I should do this, but I never wanted it. And what happens in most cases is people have accumulated the accoutrements of culture. The family, the wife, the house, the car. And maybe they had an artistic self within them that never got to come out, and they go a little crazy. Like, how did I get this? This isn't what I wanted. I didn't want this. But they didn't feel the strength to project that when they were younger. They were still trying to please everybody. That's really kind of what I see it as.
Even now, a lot of times, like, I always feel like I don't belong here. Like, I don't, like, I'm thinking, how much energy, how much time does mainstream society and the powers that be that drive them spend? Telling you, you're not normal unless you have that big house. You're not normal if you don't have that white picket fence, that 2-car garage, that trophy wife or that Ken doll husband, and a son named Chip and a daughter named Buffy and a friggin' little rugrat dog named Muffy.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, you know,
You have to shut off the noise, and you have to go into your mind and figure out what's important. And you know, even with my women friends who have gotten divorced, like, or you know, lost their boyfriend at a certain age, and they're feeling like, oh my God, where do I go from here?
yeah.
I say, all right, what did you like to do when you were a teenager before you were interested in boys? And they look at me like I've lost my mind. I said, well, what did you like to do? What was fun for you? You know, did you like to go on the swings? Did you like to, you know, ride your bike? Did you like to ride a horse? What did you like to do? What was important to you before boys became important to you? And I say, go back and do one of those things. Just one thing that you really loved to do before boys. And maybe you'll be able to figure out some more things that are fun, that aren't boys. And then once you start developing your own interests and your own self, maybe having a man in your life isn't going to be as important. And maybe once it's not important, you'll meet somebody who likes you because you've got interests. You know, and you've got things in your life that are important to you. You know, so many people don't.
Probably about a year ago, I finally gave up on the whole pursuit. Because again, here's society and, you know, got a corporation saying, oh, well, you're not normal if you don't have a mate. And I think I'd known for the longest time, I'm just not deemed fit for that. I'm broken, the world's broken, and maybe I don't need that complication. And I decided, you know, who decided this? This is my life. I'm going to do what I feel like.
Absolutely, but so many people do feel that without a significant other, they're insignificant, and that's totally. That was, you know, there was a point where I completely stopped dating because I was like, it's boring. You know, it's boring. I'm doing more interesting things with Greg, and it's before Greg and I were together, and with Richard, I'm doing interesting things. Why do I have to date? These dates are boring. I want to throw the plate of spaghetti across the table and get up and leave. So why am I doing it? It's because society tells you that, you know, a woman or a man without a mate is, you know, somehow defective. And it's not defective. It's okay to be different, because if you try to fit a square peg into a round hole, you're going to end up with a mate who's round, and you don't want that mate. Why would you want them in the first place? Why would you want to pursue somebody who only wanted you if you fit in the round hole? You know,
A person shouldn't believe in isms. They should believe in themselves. Ferris Bueller.
Of course, the wise and powerful Ferris Bueller. That's great.
Hey, it's a movie I think everybody these days needs to see.
Everybody's got their own life-changing movie. What was your life-changing movie?
I don't know.
Did you have one?
I was influenced by The Seventh Seal.
Oh, I remember you telling me about that. Yeah, and it was because of the death theme, correct?
Well, the fact that when the knight meets death, he wants to know what death knows. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So he asks death, is there a God? Is there life once, you know, you take me? Things like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a very influential movie for me.
And it changed the way you thought?
I'm sure that's true of every movie I see, though.
Oh,
I think it changes
that's
the way I
true.
think.
You can't dip something in water without getting it wet. You know?
Wow. See, that's why we pay her at this advertising agency. Now, Greg, as a guy who experienced a midlife crisis, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us about what other people can expect to go through?
No.
Okay.
It's painful. Get ready for pain.
Yeah.
How do you get out of it once you're in it?
It's a phase.
Oh,
Yeah.
it'll pass on its own?
I think so. Kind of like a kidney stone.
Yeah, I think with Greg's, it may have been opposite. It may have been all my life I've been pursuing the creative world, and now I'm in my 40s and I don't have a house and I don't have a car and I don't have. So I think it kind of was opposite for you, but
Yeah, maybe.
So
But-
if you played that David Byrne song in reverse,
yeah. Where
That
is my
would be-
beautiful
that would
house?
be great.
Where is my beautiful car? You know, but I think Greg actually got it right, though. I think he pursued the life that was most in tune with his being, and he was just then comparing it to like what culture thinks he should have. You know, what the world thinks he should have, what other people expect of him. And I think that even when we first met, and I found out, the way he lived his life, I admired that. I couldn't do it.
that was the first thing I admired about him.
Yeah, I had a daughter to support. I had to make certain concessions with my life. But I thought, wow, this guy is living the life.
He asked me and Ron Emke to come over to his apartment. And I walked in and I saw that there was no dishes in the cupboards.
Yeah.
Except for one dish and one cup.
That's what you have now.
And I said, "Oh, are you moving in?" He goes, "No, I've been living here a while." I said, "One dish, one cup?" He said, "That's all I need." I looked over the other room and there was a card table with a folding chair. I said, "Is that like a desk?" He goes, "Yeah." It was the most monastic life I've ever seen anybody have. And then in the third room, he had his mattress on the floor, and he had a little lamp next to the mattress so he could read. And it was touching that somebody would be that monastic in whatever year that was. You probably remember the year, right, Craig?
Yeah.
Can you share it with us?
93.
You got to ask the right questions.
First time I ever saw this guy was at Nietzsche's, and he was the front man at Bad Ronald, and he was just wild,
Yeah.
I mean, man, and his energy level, it was hard to explain. His energy level was like through the roof, but it was contained,
Yeah.
I mean, it reminded me of a bottle of soda water all shooken up, and you never knew which way it was going to go if the cap came off. But it's basically his whole inner dynamics, it's kind of like the Big Lebowski's rug for the band. It tied it all together,
Well, I think from my anger with I'm trying. Greg will attest to this. Something about COVID has made me understand that being volatile is not good. So whenever I get to the point where I think I'm going to go berserk over some little thing, I'm trying to do the thing that the Stoics would tell you to do, which is reason it out. What's the worst thing that can happen? All right, so I reasoned it out, and I've been trying very hard not to be so explosive, but that's how my anger always came out with, that kind of yelling. Greg's pain and anger came out when he performed, and the first time I saw him perform, I thought, I have never seen such a passionate human being in all my life. And that was my impression.
You still got the passion, Greg?
No.
We have a lot going on right now. His mom's in the hospital, and we've got stuff going on. But plus we had COVID, but we're totally over it now.
Is your mother? Is it a physical thing? Is it like that's wrong with her, or is it something with her mind?
She has dementia, bad. Yeah. So
they're trying to find a chemical that can help her memory and stuff like that.
No, they're trying to find a place where they have a memory care unit where she can live. because she can't live by herself anymore.
She might leave the stove on or something.
And she has, and so there's a couple things that have been going on like that. So it's a bad time for her. I don't blame her for being upset, but
Is she angry over the fact that her mind is deteriorating?
no, she's angry that we've incarcerated her in the hospital.
Oh, she feels there's nothing wrong?
She knows there's something wrong, but she doesn't.
That's not the solution, huh?
Right. She doesn't want to lose her independence, and I don't blame her.
Uh-huh.
You know, but she's past that point. So.
Uh-huh.
But okay, let's talk about something on your list. I know you've got.
I got a ton of stuff.
I know, because we haven't done this. How long has it been? It's been a couple weeks.
That I don't know.
I don't remember.
Oh, when you were, one more thing about your essay. You said that it's important to learn from the writers of the past.
Yeah.
And that made me think of the Lowney Handy Writers Colony. Ever hear of the Handy Writers Colony? Run by a woman named Lowney Handy, and she had a technique. And for some reason, she turned out, I think it was like a half a dozen national best-selling authors at her colony. So, but listen to her technique. You got to visit with her for an hour every day. All right? Okay. So when you would come in to visit with her, she'd be sitting at her desk and she'd say, okay, what is it you're interested in and what are the kind of things you write about? And you would tell her, and then she'd say, well, when you come in tomorrow, she'd reach into her bag and she would take out a book and she would say, okay, here's A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. I want you to retype the first 50 pages and bring it to me for our meeting tomorrow. Then you would do that, and you'd bring it to her. She would read it to make sure that you typed it word for word, and she would say, that's pretty good. For our next meeting, type out the next 50 pages. And then you would finally reach a point where she'd say, all right, I think you've typed up enough Hemingway. Here, do the same thing with Nathaniel Hawthorne. Here's a scarlet letter. Well, the day would eventually come when she'd say, this is great. Now bring me your work. And when you do bring your work, make sure none of those other authors are in your writing.
Well, I think it was Seneca, and I'm not 100% sure because I listen to those things on YouTube all the time, mostly about the Stoics. But I think it was Seneca who talked about how he only had so many years of life to acquire wisdom. But if he read the wisdom of somebody from the past, that he was able to acquire the wisdom that they accumulated in their lifetime by reading what they wrote. And I just love that because he said, I'm able to accumulate knowledge of other people's lifetimes that it took them all their lives to come up with, and so thereby accentuating my own knowledge and my own wisdom. And if it's not Seneca, I apologize, but I just that thought just blew my mind. Yes, you can. I mean, look at all the people there are out there who have spent their whole lives thinking and reasoning and figuring things out. And you know, once in a while, I'd come up with an idea, and then somewhere down the road, I'd read it. I'd read it in an ancient, text, either a philosopher and I'd say, I thought that was original, but I mean, the thing is, I came up with it myself because I hadn't been exposed to it. But if I would have read that first, maybe I could have expanded on it instead of thinking, oh, eureka, I came up with this brilliant thought, and it's difficult sometimes when you think but there's nothing wrong with it because you're born with an empty brain. You're born with a completely blank slate. Everything that you've read or been told or heard or seen has created the information in your brain that you are doling out as a writer or as a conversationalist. So you can combine two different things, and that's how you can be original. You know, and that's how really brilliant, genius type minds work. But you're collecting material, and yes, if you know you might, and that's why a lot of people use dreams, because in your dream your subconscious is combining Eleanor Roosevelt and a blue elephant, and so you get a blue Eleanor Roosevelt, and that may spur an idea that you couldn't have had in your conscious mind because you had them separate. You had the blue elephant here and you had Eleanor Roosevelt here. But as you sleep, they merge, and it's like, oh, you know, and it's a new thing. So dreaming is interesting. I don't remember my dreams as much as I used to. Do you remember your dreams?
Well, I just had a conversation with Sanford about dreams. And are they prophetic or not?
No.
And I said, I take the position that they're inspirational, because it's not so much the what the dream says, but it's how you interpret it.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
So there was this chemist, and he was working on making a new synthetic compound that he was going to call benzene, but he couldn't figure out the right combination of chemicals. Because I didn't realize this, but when you're a chemist, you have to draw the diagram before you actually do the experiment. Otherwise,
Like a blueprint.
yeah, it's like an architect building a house.
Yeah.
Did you know this?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so they're always putting like C2 and then putting a line and H1 and then putting a line, you know. If you watch Breaking Bad, you've seen those formulas,
Yeah.
you know. A lot of times they're hexagonal,
Yeah.
those chemistry formulas. He couldn't figure out how to make this new compound, and he had a dream. And in the dream, a snake comes out of a hole, and the snake approaches him, and then the snake starts to turn around, and the snake starts to eat its own tail. So he wakes up, and he says, that snake's trying to tell me something, that I'm going about this formula the wrong way. He says, I'm looking at the formula in one level, right? I should be looking at it as a spiral that gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
But that was his interpretation, like you said.
And that interpretation gave him the impetus to come up with the formula, and he invented benzene.
And the thing is, it was probably something that his subconscious mind knew, but he couldn't access it
Yeah.
with his conscious mind,
Yeah.
because there's too much stuff in there. I mean, the filing system's bad. I mean, people with good memories, maybe they just have really good filing systems, right?
Yeah.
But for people normal, well, I'm nowhere near normal on the memory track. I am so subnormal, it's not even funny. But when you're sleeping, a lot of things that are buried in there come to the surface in your subconscious mind. So, I mean, yeah, he knew it. He just couldn't. It was like trying to figure out somebody's name, and it keeps coming into your mouth, in front of the tip of my tongue, right?
Yeah.
And so it's on the tip of his brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there was that. Okay, here's something from the news. All right, ready for this? I want your impression on what can we conclude from this? The National Institute of Mental Health had a study that came out 2 months ago. They said to high school students, do you feel persistently hopeless and depressed? 20 years ago, it was 26%, 36 just before COVID, and it's up to 45% now.
I think that social media has a lot to do with that. But I also think that our society and the way our educational system, I mean, I harp on this all the time. If you're somebody who likes to take a radio and take it apart and look at the pieces and then see if you can put it back together again, you should not be sent to school to get a master's in business. You know, it's not what your mind wants to do. And there was something in in here about, I'll maybe find it later. Everyone's put on the same track. The square peg in the round hole. Not only square pegs, diamond-shaped pegs, octagonal, everybody is put into the same track.
Mm-hmm.
There is no real evaluation and conversation and piecing together the interests and the proclivities of a kid before they're told what they need to do for the rest of their lives. I told my grandchildren this a million times. Life is long. It's a long time. But it's a bad long time if you're doing what you don't like.
Yeah.
You're going to suffer instead of enjoying what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be what you think. You don't have to be a teacher or a nurse or all of the tracks that they're sending. Young women are still being sent in that direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you like math, do something with math. Don't be afraid of it because it's not something girls normally do.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody takes that time at the schools. The guidance counselors don't have time to sit down individually and get to know each kid and figure out and then if they did, if a guidance counselor said, I think your son would make an excellent cabinet maker, they're going to say, what are you talking about? He's going to college. And yeah, maybe he could go to college.
Yeah.
And learn some stuff and then go on. But
there's a joke about that. You know how they have those strollers with two children?
Yeah.
And a man walks up to a woman and he says, wow, beautiful children. What age are they? And the woman said, well, the doctor is 3 and the lawyer is 4.
Yeah.
Cookie cutter, right?
Yeah. So, but it's not just parents. It's just, and there's so many unrealistic expectations now, and there's so much crap. All these people, influencers online who are actually making a shit ton of money. And
some of that is fake, by the way.
Right. It's not. It's
because an industry has popped up, like rent a Mercedes for a day. And that's the day you film for your followers. Yeah, I'm just taking a drive to a local fashion store, you know what I mean? And then you return it at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well,
you can do that with clothing too. You can rent it for a day.
Yeah.
Just to deceive people that this is your lifestyle.
Right. So I don't know how to get. Really, honestly, sitting down individually with children and talking to them about their expectations. And I think that a year of counseling in at least in high school would work wonders. Just a year of one-on-one counseling every week. If they can put other things in the curriculum, why can't? But it would have to be one-on-one because kids don't want to talk about these things in front of other people, and maybe they don't even want to talk about it in front of a counselor. But just getting to know the kid and finding out what they're best suited for. There's so many look at the kids that are really depressed are the kids who are on one of these tracks for they don't really want to be a doctor, but their parents are pushing. They don't really want to be a lawyer, but what else can I do? They don't even explore or experiment. And a plumber makes as much money as a lawyer, and it's and it's way easier to get people who need their toilet fixed than people who want to hire a lawyer that they're not familiar with.
Yeah, we were discussing earlier, me and Tony, who are the true essential workers.
Right. I agree. I think that, and every time I talk to a tradesman, when I talk to the guy who came over to give me an estimate for my house to paint it, he told me that he couldn't paint my house because his workers are too old.
Ooh.
And so, because he can't get young people to do it. Because they're told it's beneath them that somehow they're going to get this fabulous job with, a big corporation that's going to make them happy, and it's not. And that, I think that's part of the reason why we have so much depression among young people. The expectations, and I mean, also, they're more in tune with things like the climate problems that we're having. They're scared to go to school because people are being shot.
Right. We're celebrating the 4th of July. We're celebrating our freedom on the 4th of July indoors so we don't get shot. You see that cartoon?
No, I didn't.
Because there was a shooting on the 4th of July at a parade.
At a parade.
So
live in a small-
someone drew a cartoon of children hiding in the house.
Yeah. So I don't know how to. I can't. I know what the problems are. I don't know what the solutions are. I mean, I know what we should do, but it's not going to happen. We have. And so that's what one of the things. Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, all right. I knew nothing about Teddy Roosevelt except that Mark Twain hated his guts. And I love Mark Twain. I'm a huge Mark Twain fan. So I read his autobiography, and he's always saying these horrible things about Teddy Roosevelt. He's bombastic. He's an embarrassment. He's, he's butting his nose in where it doesn't belong. Overreach of government. And then I watched this 4-hour special about Teddy Roosevelt.
It's probably the one Ken Burns did.
It wasn't Ken Burns.
Oh.
It was the History Channel, and it was just Teddy Roosevelt. And they talked to some talking heads, and then they show some footage. It was really well done. So he was bombastic. He was bigger than life. He tried really hard. He was a sickly kid, and he tried really hard to be a man's man, right? He was very resentful that his father didn't fight in the war, the Revolutionary War, not Revolutionary War, the
Spanish American?
No, his father in the
1812, that one?
No, the one against the North and the South.
Civil War.
Civil War. Okay. So he was his father didn't fight in the Civil War, and he thought that was shameful. Although he loved his father, and his father's the one who helped him to actually become physically strong enough to live the life that he lived, and he was alive to the 10th, 11th power, But the thing, he was a rich kid. He had lots of privilege, and he was Republican. And he listened when people told him things. Like, he was against the Cigar Act. He was against the Cigar Act. Because people were making cigars in their home and in these tenements, and they were making the cigars, and so the cigar makers were making tons of money because they didn't have to pay them. They didn't have to buy a factory. The people were in their houses, and so he thought, it's good. It's good for business. It's people. The companies are making a lot of money on these cigars, and everybody smoked cigars in those days. And somebody said to him, "Come with me," and he did. And he went into the tenements, and he saw how the people lived, and he saw the little kids rolling cigars, and he saw the conditions, and when he asked the head of the household how much money this brought into his house, because he's figuring, okay, they don't have to build a factory, so they're probably paying them well. He said $1, and at the time $1 was a lot. He says, $1 each? He says, no, $1 for the whole family. We get $1 a day and that wasn't even enough to. So he saw the conditions, and he saw how bad it was, and he brought this guy, the head of this household, and he was some kind of politician in New York City New York State or New York City at the time. And so he brought him to the meeting, and he had him talk, and he got the bill passed. And the same thing, Sinclair Lewis wrote that book about the jungle.
Yeah.
Upton Sinclair.
Yeah. It's Upton Sinclair, yeah. Okay.
So glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. So he wrote about that, and he read the book, and he met with him, and he said, is it this bad, or do you have a beef against, I didn't mean that to be a pun, do you have something against the meat factories? And he said, it's this bad. So he sent in 2 reporters, and the reporters went in, and they said they were inspectors. And they went in, and they looked at everything, and he invited all these politicians that were against this bill for food inspection. He said they would just cost the business owners too much. So what he did was he plopped a big steak down in front of them. At this table, he was sitting at the table in the White House, and everybody's digging in and eating their steak. And while they're eating, he pulls out the first page of the report, which talks about how the meat was falling into expectoration on the floor, and these people had TB, and it was falling into the TB on the floor. That was, it's the spit.
Exodus too. Rat Exodus.
And so the people are eating the meat, and all of a sudden they're like, pushing it, and that's how he got that. I mean, he was brilliant in his techniques. I mean, and the common men loved him. Because he did actually help them. Now, although he did have invite Booker T. Washington to the White House for dinner. It was the first time a president had sat down at a table to eat with a black man. And it pissed off the Southern Democrats like crazy. So he didn't do it again. So he did kind of capitulate. And then when he was running again, he did not allow the African American delegates to come to the convention because he needed those votes of the people. I'm not saying it's right. It's not right. But at least he tried. I mean, with all the presidents that we've had, he really wanted to help common people, as rich as he was. So, I mean, okay, so counterpoint, Richard. I know you're waiting for counterpoint here.
No, I'm not waiting for counterpoint.
Oh, okay. Because I didn't know anything about him. I had no idea how beloved he was. I had no idea. I mean, of course, Teddy Bear, everybody knows about that.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't know when his wife and child died, that's when he went, he started the parks. I mean, and then his grandson was Theodore Roosevelt was the grandfather of Delano,
I thought they were cousins.
Or cousins. There was something.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, all the stuff that he came up with, that Teddy Roosevelt came up with early on in the century, social reforms, Social Security, old age pension for veterans, child labor laws, and there was a whole slew of social reforms that he wanted to put through, and when his cousin got in, he carried them out.
So they gave the credit to Theodore Roosevelt.
No, they didn't. But he was the one he was a progressive par excellence, much more so than you could even do now with and get elected.
The version of the story that I heard, the version of the story that I heard was that Franklin Roosevelt was under the impression that unless he did something, capitalism would fall apart and there would be a revolution in the country. And so what he did is he called Norman Thomas from the Socialist Party. And he said, help me understand what a lot of these reforms are that you're trying to put through. And that's when he said unemployment insurance, and 40-hour work week, and disability insurance, all these things. And And he literally took those ideas and put them in the New Deal.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is they were very similar to what Teddy Roosevelt was touting earlier in the century.
So both Franklin and Teddy were in the same ideological tradition.
They must have had, they must have just come from families that valued helping the underdog or whatever. I have like maybe 15 more minutes of the series to watch, but I had came away with a whole different feeling about Teddy, especially. And you know what? You know how they say, and there's a theory in communication. If you hold a very different view of something than somebody that you care about, you either have to change how you think about that person or change your view. And I'm starting to think, well, maybe I need to reread Mark Twain. Maybe but I know he was a progressive in a lot of ways. But if he cared more about the elite than the people who he also believed in, every man should work for what he gets. So I mean, and that was a common thought back then. So he felt that was fair, but the playing field isn't fair, isn't level. So you can't really go by that. But I see where he was coming from. But I think he was wrong about Teddy Roosevelt. I'm not saying he was perfect. I'm saying that.
So you would like to sit down with Mark Twain?
Well, I would invite them both to my fantasy dinner party.
Well, first find out from Mark what it is that he disapproves of.
Yeah. Well,
so
I read a bunch of quotes after I decided that I'm pissed off at Mark Twain. So I went online and I started looking at things that he said about Teddy Roosevelt, and there's some pretty brutal things,
And I like to get a hold of Twain, tell him, hey, guess what, mofo, you want to live my life? Come on over here, have at it. By the way, your little Huck Finn there ain't fit to lift my boots near you. And don't let the door hit you in the ass.
Well, I mean, Teddy Roosevelt also killed wild animals in Africa, which I'm not big on.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that. I just think any rich guy who is willing to go and look and see how the people live and what the problem is.
Yeah.
I got to give him credit.
Yeah. Take the ideas that he had.
It's like Buddha. You can't isolate yourself and then think that you're going to be able to be a fair leader if you don't know how the other half lives.
Pardon.
Yeah. So Greg, you didn't. Hi. Do you want to talk about something you've been reading?
I'm reading Adam Carolla. He's a racist, and he's a sexist, and he's a pig. He's got a few good ideas, but he's one of those guys who pretends he's telling the truth while he's being how he hates everybody who's not a white male like himself, rich white male living in Beverly Hills.
Well, he's one of those guys who believes that everybody should work for what they get, and that nobody's entitled to any help, right?
Well, he's basically just made a living about being a sexist, racist pig, and he has sexist, racist fans, and he's proud of it.
But he had a show with Jimmy Kimmel.
That was a sexist show, yeah.
The Man Show.
It was called The Man Show because it was sexist, and Kimmel, of course, did blackface, and
yeah.
So he did it. No, he did a sexist show, but he did a racist. So do you think racist skits?
Do you think Kimmel has evolved more than this other guy?
Yeah, probably his wife's helped him evolve.
Yeah, his wife's pretty cool. I like her. So Greg likes to read things that he doesn't agree with. I
agree with some of his stuff. I don't agree with the heavy racism and heavy sexism. I agree with some of his stuff. Makes sense. He has some good points. He has some liberal points and some right. What
are some of the points you like?
He makes a lot of good sports points. He likes sports. Like for instance, innocuous pop culture stuff. I agree with. But which is like Super Bowl Saturday should be.
Oh, instead of Sunday?
Well, because of all the people that
Take off the Monday.
take off the Monday.
Parties, yeah.
There's no reason it shouldn't be Super Bowl Saturday. They should just switch it.
That sounds reasonable.
That would be a good idea. Make it, because that way everyone would be sleeping off their hangover on Sunday.
Hey,
What's the difference? It's 2 weeks in between the AFC Championship and NFC Championship. And,
yeah, it doesn't make any difference. You're right. I think that's a good point.
13 or 14 days, just do 13. And he said that it's sad that Chris Collinsworth said, I met some female fans and they were really knowledgeable. And it was so instantaneous on social media that he said it was beautiful to meet some female fans and they were very knowledgeable. So I'm paraphrasing, of course, but
Yeah.
and social media was so crazed about the fact that he would say female fans were knowledgeable, and isn't that cool? Because I guess he's not complimenting them in their minds. He's saying, "Oh, women don't know football." So they went crazy on social media. So by the time the broadcast ended, before it went off the air, the same night he said, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry that I."
Yeah, but the thing is, it is a stereotype, but for the most part, who are the people that really are into football?
Men.
Isn't it men?
Yeah.
Well, I've been a truck driver for 20 years, and I don't know much about football. I'm an artist when I'm not driving truck.
Right, but I mean, Greg and Richard are actually two of the exceptions to that artist football rule. They like them both, which I find interesting. But I don't think there was anything wrong with him saying that. I think that's a bunch of bullshit that they would attack him like that. Yeah, some women do know a lot about football, but not. I mean, and some men don't.
But I mean, it's an innocuous comment to say, I met two female fans today, and it's wonderful how they were so knowledgeable at the game. That's basically what he said.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing.
Because women don't play football, really. I mean,
I'm saying that comment though, and having it be so bad on social media that his bosses before the broadcast ended told him to apologize. And he said I deeply apologize for hurting anyone's feelings because I said I met two women and they were great fans.
I don't like this kind of world that we live in where you can't say anything like. I mean, if he would have said, I met a woman doctor and I couldn't believe it. She was knowledgeable. Now that would have been offensive.
He didn't even say, I can't believe that women are knowledgeable. He just said, I met two women and it was great how knowledgeable they were. He didn't say, I can't believe they're knowledgeable. He said, it's great how knowledgeable they are.
I'm trying to come up with a sentence that really would have been offensive. Like, I went to this woman doctor and she knew what she was doing.
Yeah, that's totally
offensive.
different though.
But to say you met two women who knew a lot about football and you were impressed by that.
Wonderful how knowledgeable they were.
Oh,
he said they were wonderful how knowledgeable they were. They had a lot of specific comments and questions about the Steelers with me. And then meanwhile, not everyone, many people on social media go ballistic, so he has to apologize. He has to deeply apologize.
Well, he wouldn't have said, I met these two guys and they were now. I mean, he wouldn't have even thought about it. But
no, what he's saying,
I don't know. I don't think it's that offensive.
What he's saying is that most women who like football are not deeply knowledgeable about it. They go for the home team. If they like football, they don't root for. They're not in the NFL. Hardly any females are into the NFL. They're into their home team. Like the Bills won. That was great. The Bills, if you're a Buffalonian, they don't say, I'm going to watch that. Really going to watch the Bengals-Steelers game later tonight. But men do.
All right, so
because they're much more into it.
All right, let's just talk.
The percentage of women that watch the Bengals-Steelers game that are Bills fans is pretty much 1% or less. It's non-existent.
We don't know the percentage, but the thing is, I would be willing to bet that men are more likely to watch a football game that is not their home team than women.
Not more likely, way more likely.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. So I don't understand why that's so bad to say.
What's so bad to say?
Do you? Well,
say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people. I know.
See ya.
Yeah, I just don't get that.
How is it that we are so into dissecting every single thing that anybody say, but no one gives a shit that A, we are not working to live, but now living to work.